Hello, hello, and welcome back to Call Your Coven, practical advice for nonsensical times. My name is Bee, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm your resident numerologist.
My name is Jeanna. My pronouns are also she, her, and I am your resident astrologer.
And my name is Meg. My pronouns are she, they, and I am your resident tarot reader.
And this month's conversation, January 2026, is about divination, prediction, forecasting, the future, aka basically a lot of what people come to us for. However, it's interesting because I know that the three of us have there's an interesting Venn diagram of how we all each approach our relationship to forecasting unknown future events. Um, there's a lot of ethics to get into here. There's a lot of specific choices is maybe not the right word, but like specific styles of interpretation, I think that we each use that are informed by what our relationship is to prediction generally. And I wanted to talk about this because I'm always interested in talking about it, but I'm also like, I think this is especially a good time of year to be talking because we are seeing all over. I don't know what y'all's like TikTok algorithms are like, but mine is like prediction, prediction, prediction. 2026 for Aquarians, 2026 for Capricorns, 2026 if your life path is, and it's a lot of stuff that I think can really inform whether people like fuck with occult modalities or have a really knee-jerk reaction against occult modalities. How's that for an intro to the topic?
Perfect.
Cool. So yeah, we're going to be having a conversation like we always do. I have some general notes to maybe keep us on track, but the interesting stuff always happens in the margins. So we'll see where it takes us. But I want to open by throwing the question to both of you. What to you is prediction, divination, forecasting? Three things that also arguably are not the same, actually very distinct things. But like, what comes to mind when you think of it? What's your just kind of general relationship to it, either as a person or as a practitioner or both?
You want to go first?
Meg is like, no.
I talk about this all the time, so I'm actually like, I don't know if I know what you think, actually, so I'm very interested for you to go first.
Right. What do I think? Well, I have to say that what I think about forecasting has probably even changed since we started doing this
Mhm.
podcast.
Yeah.
And it happened this time last year when I had the really kind of stunning experience of reading year ahead forecasts and realizing that absolutely nothing that anyone said was going to apply to me in my current circumstances. And it wasn't,
Can you just quickly like footnote what those circumstances were
oh,
for
yeah, yeah,
listeners
yeah, yeah,
who haven't been with us the whole time?
totally. Buckle up if you know. In a nutshell, I started 2025 in the hospital with 5 spinal fractures and no diagnosis, but it would ultimately turn out to be a rare form of lymphoma. And so at the beginning of the year, I didn't have any answers, and I didn't even know that I was going to survive the year, let alone be able to implement anything. And so I do have to say that alongside of this, at the end of 2025, I did read my planner back to myself, and I had written two like goals or intentions in the top of the planner. And one was health and one was education. And they both happened by the end of the year. So that's really important as I share the like flip side of that, where it's like, oh, none of this is applicable. It also kind of, it still was. And that was a miracle that I experienced. But I know that not everyone will have the same outcome. And I think that's actually kind of the crux of like what we're talking
Yes.
about with divination and forecasting, which is I do feel like it's an attempt to speak to collective energy, but even in collective energy, everyone is going to have unique context and experiences and life
Yep.
circumstances that are going to inform what's possible for them as an individual within a collective experience. So there's that like 9-1 growth edge kind of, for me at least, is thinking about how can we make forecasts that are still rooted in I don't know what's going to happen and I don't know what you're going through,
Yeah.
and yet not shy away from saying things that could be really applicable to
Yeah.
someone, because obviously you're not writing forecasts for people who are in life and death
Yeah.
situations. We kind
Generally
of,
not. Yeah.
yeah, generally like we're
Yeah.
forecasting for people who are making magic in their everyday
Yeah.
lives. And that's not to minimize anything that might be going on, but just saying we kind of forecast for the everyday and not for the
Not for the
dire.
extremes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that answer any question?
No, it absolutely does. I think that a lot of this this conversation is going to be rather like doing something I've never done, which is look into a crystal ball and like, kind of like working through the hazy, foggy, swampy morass of like, what the fuck is it? Meg, before you pop in, I do want to offer like just some distinctions for listeners to whom the distinctions between these different words may not be obvious, at least in terms of how I think of them. Prediction is the clearest cut. It's like I am predicting, you are predicting something that will or won't happen, usually something that will happen or is likely to happen. And then to me, divination can be the same. It can be a prediction, but like divining on something can also be assessing the quality of like,
Mhm.
would this be a good idea to do? Divining on whether like the underlying assumption that grounds what might happen is even true or not. It's like there's some subtle differences there. And then to me, forecasting is especially where we're talking like what B said about general, like astrology horoscopes are forecasts. They are
Mhm.
written for everyone with your rising sign. There are billions of people in the world. There are 12 rising signs. Everything in every forecast that you read is not going to be fucking applicable. And to me, the forecasting is like, it's how I talk. It's kind of the astrology piece of like how I talk about astrology just being the weather people of the occult world. I'm like 60% chance of this, generally, give or take your circumstances. So I don't know if I explain that clearly, but to me, that's kind of how those things, like, they're obviously related in the same bucket, but they also are like, there's some subtle differences.
I will just say then that I don't do a lot of predicting,
Mm-hmm.
nor do I necessarily seek out a lot of predictions as
Yeah.
a receiver.
Yeah.
I do love divination.
Yes. Yeah.
I find a lot, and for what you said, that it's like quality as well
Yeah.
as what can we
Yeah.
speak around information
Yeah.
around this.
Yeah, I feel like all of us are forecast and divination people, and none of us really give or seek like the certainty of prediction, as it were, and trying to kind of control for the future outcomes. I don't know. I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop. Meg, what do you think? What's your relationship to those things, like personally, professionally? You have a really interesting take.
I have a lot of feelings about this topic. I think it's something that's really, really important to think about. It's something that I talk about a lot in like all of my beginner classes, something I talk about in all my books, it's something I talk about all the time. Because I think especially when it comes to tarot, it's something that people don't think about as much as I wish they did in terms of beliefs around fate and free will and what is even possible to predict. And I will talk about that more in a minute. But I'm glad we're breaking down terms a little bit because I do think that they can be kind of confusing. I also think of divination as exploring things that are unknown or
Yeah.
asking questions about stuff where you're not necessarily going to walk away with certainty. And I think that that's really important because it really informs my own tarot philosophy, is that when I come to the cards, I'm not usually like, will this happen? Is this going to be okay? Will I get the thing that I want? I'm usually like, what's going to support me right now while I'm trying to work towards this? Or what is something that I could do right now that's going to help me get closer to the outcome I'm hoping for or something. So yeah, that's kind of how I delineate divination versus prediction. The phrase fortune telling is used a lot with tarot specifically, and tarot has a long history of being used for fortune telling or being used for predictions. But I really don't read that way. In some ways, because when it comes to predictions, I'm a bit of a skeptic. I don't really believe that fate is like a thing that you can just say, will this happen on this time and day? I do think that there are versions of prediction that can be supportive. I think there are methods for prediction that are more general that can be useful or encouraging. But in general, I prefer asking questions that might have an answer that the tool I'm using could feasibly give in a way that I would believe that answer. I think that it's really interesting when people, especially if they're in a more panicked or like dysregulated state, come to a tool like the cards, for example, and just are like desperate for reassurance and ask a really general question like, will this be okay? Will I be okay? And you can ask the cards that, but I think thinking about that question, if I think about all the possible answers that the cards could give, there's no answer that would make me feel better. There's no answer the cards could give me that would necessarily actually give me the reassurance I want. Because if the cards tell me it's going to be okay, when? How? What does okay mean? Who's we? Like, what does this apply to? What are we even talking about here? It's too general.
Yeah.
If they say no, I'm going to feel like shit, right? And if they say
They're, like,
maybe,
speaking to me.
yeah, and if they say maybe, I'm like, okay, Jesus Christ, do I have to ask 10 more questions? So it's like there's no version of that answer to that question that's going to be satisfying. So instead, I'd much rather ask a question that I think the tarot is capable of answering, or that the tarot can answer in a way that I can actually receive and understand and do something with. And that's basically my entire tarot philosophy. In a sloppy little nutshell.
No, that's not sloppy. Excuse you. That's not sloppy at all. What we're not gonna do in 2026 in our Coven conversations is apologize for how much we talked or how not clear we thought. We're not doing that in 2026.
Fair enough.
Please remind me of this in the future when I
Yeah,
inevitably
when you do it
that.
in 10 minutes, I will remind you, yes.
My accurate prediction for the episode is that
Oh, no.
I am definitely
I don't
going.
like this prediction. This is not helpful or supportive to me.
And then when does it become self-fulfilling prophecy?
That's
Exactly.
the thing. If the cards tell you it's going to happen, how are you? Are you
How are you
surrendering
doing?
agency? Like, are
I
you
was
going to
gonna
stop
say,
trying?
Meg, you mentioned a really essential piece that like is so core to the foundation of the art of fortune telling in whatever capacity, whatever tool it's being used for, which is the fate versus free will,
Mhm.
and what is the practitioner's feeling about that? What is their ethic around that? And also like what is the querent or the client? Like what is their ethic around receiving? Because I think a lot about the power dynamics, and usually call this out in one-on-one sessions, which I am gratefully perma closed for. So excited. I'm done with client work. I'm just like officially closed for it forever. I'm so excited about that. But when I was doing a lot of client work like a month ago, I would tell people at the top of like our year ahead readings, which I also do largely because like it was forecasting, like it's less like interpretation and prediction of personality bullshit. And I'm like, no, I can tell you your weather. This is your weather report for the year. And I feel very confident in doing that. But I would tell people, I'm like, this is a collaboration, this is a conversation. There's a power dynamic in between the person who's like divining on your chart and then the person who is in the chair receiving it. And like, is the person who's coming to you in a state of panic or dysregulation, or even someone who's like, I book with you every year. It's time for my reading with Meg. Like, cool, we're gonna go do this now. And they're like not panicked and not dysregulated. What's their relationship to being told something about themselves that they may not have realized or even agree with by a spiritual practitioner? And this is the part where I apologize because that was very roundy.
And there it is.
And there, cool.
We're all doing
But
great.
the fate versus free will thing, I think, is worth us digging into a little bit. Not to like
Yeah.
make you guys talk about it, but like I
No,
just
no,
want to like
no.
super
I
flag it.
super agree. And I think it's interesting that we're talking about modalities and our
Mm,
different modalities, because I'm going to throw in a random fourth one to hopefully illustrate a point.
yeah.
But I feel like with tarot, I don't consider myself an astrologer, but I am a tarot reader. And I feel like with tarot and numerology, they both have many options, and tarot way more than numerology, but like there are many options and they do need interpretation. And so that's why I think that some of this free will versus fate versus, how do we take emotional regulation into account?
Yeah.
Like so much of it is getting processed through us. And so we do have to take both the practitioner and the client into account. But especially, I'll just talk about when we're like trying to divine for yourself or trying to
Yeah.
forecast or predict for yourself. It's like there are so many options, and it really does matter your interpretation, your knowledge, your understanding of the numbers, the cards, whatever it is that you're looking at. The fourth modality that I want to bring in, I just posted about a magic 8 ball
Yeah.
this
I
Yeah.
morning.
saw. I'm excited you did. Yeah.
And I have a magic 8 ball. Her name is Wendy. She has the soul of an ancient diner waitress who comes to your table with a coffee pot and you ask her questions and she tells you point blank the answer. And so I feel like with something else like that, like if you're using a tool that is literally going to tell you yes or
I
no.
was going to say the yes no divination systems versus
Yes.
the
Like
general. Yeah.
dice or like Lenormand cards or yeah.
Yeah, there are
Pendulum.
other
Yeah.
systems and other tools that
Yeah.
will give you more straightforward answers.
Yep.
And that's not what we're talking about today. So I don't want to get too in the weeds.
Yeah.
But why I
Agree.
brought it up was because my post today was literally like, actually, Wendy got a little too cunty in 2025 and we couldn't hang and we had to take a break. Because every time I went to Wendy asking a question and she told me an answer that I didn't want to hear and didn't think that that was real, it's like,
Yep.
will not be bound to this yes or no answer, Wendy. And then like but even that, like the relationship that you have to the tool or the modality that you're using is going to flavor and color
Yeah.
the art of prediction or the art of forecasting. So I do think we're really touching on
Yeah.
kind of the nitty-gritty crux of it, which is like, how can you make something universal that is inherently not?
Yep.
And how can we find like useful, helpful, supportive information and experiences through these tools that do have the capability to help us out?
Yeah. I only started using yes no divination systems this last year. Because for similar reasons, like I don't know, I feel like I learned so early, because I found Teresa Reed so early. Shout out to the tarot lady, who was like, do not ask the tarot, yes, no, like do not, and so I was like, oh, okay, that's a rule. Little evangelical, ex-evangelical, like queer 20 something in my bedroom that I shared with like multiple gay men in Somerville, Massachusetts. I was like reading my little cards at my Crate and Barrel desk. I was like, okay, no yes no questions, it has to be general, or like just a how or why, not so much a will it, yes or no. But I feel like I've gotten to, I don't know, I got to a point this year where I was like, no, yes no can totally work, and I use dice, and it's like a 1 to 6 ranking system on a d6, which is to say a standard dice, and it's like a 1 or 2 is a no, 5 or 6 is a yes, 3 or 4 is a maybe, aka just read tarot about it because you'll get more information from the cards in that. But so I appreciate you saying that, because I think it's really valuable to like call out that there are tools that will do that yes no for you, and also your reaction to it, like the general person's like reaction, I think, to yes no divination, and whether there's that immediate knee jerk like, I'm not looking for that, I don't want to know, I want I want support. I think it's also like okay to ask the cards, hey, I need support right now. Hey, like spirit ancestors, like I could use some like encouragement. Like, and being so specific about what you're looking for to help narrow in on the query, or to help narrow in on the result, rather, because it's like sometimes you don't need a reflection of the shitty situation you're in. You need an you just need an encouragement that like, hey, how can I get out of it, or what is a tool I can use during it. And I think, Meg, this is where like your teaching is so helpful, because I feel like you give so many people questions that they haven't thought that they could ask the tarot for, that get at the specificity of like what they are really looking for when they're coming to divination.
Yeah, I think the question is at least as important as the answer. And I think that the way that the question is framed and the specificity and intentionality of the question is so important. My book that came out in July, Tarot Spreads, it's called Tarot Spreads, but half the book is really about how to write a question because that's really what spreads are. It's a supported question that's broken into parts and is helping you get to the thing that you want to receive from the cards. Um, and I would say that that can apply to other modalities as well. But part of the reason I don't use a lot of yes, no modalities, and yes, for who I can feel someone out there who's going to listen to this and be like, but there are ways to read tarot that say yes or no. Yes, there are systems that use tarot that give yes or no like meanings for each of the cards. I don't use those meanings. That's it. If you
Incidentally,
want to,
someone
that's
like
fine.
Teresa does do yes no in personal client work,
Sure.
but also Teresa Reed has been reading tarot for more than 40 years,
Yeah.
and I feel confident in her ability to.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like if I really feel the need to have a yes or no thing, I'm probably going to go to somebody else about it rather than reading for myself. But that's again, that's another thing. Like, but I think there's something really interesting in the like, how are you asking the question? What do you actually want to receive? Which I think is one of the most important things to think about when using these kinds of like predictive divination systems where you are looking for something specific. But when it comes to prediction, I'm usually thinking about like, is this something that I think the tarot can know? Is this something that makes sense within my worldview that the tarot or whatever I'm speaking to through the tarot could conceivably have an answer for? And then it's, do I think that the tarot can communicate that answer to me in a way that is clear and easy to understand? And third of all, do I think that I have the skills and the objectivity to interpret that answer in a way that's going to be accurate? All of those things have to be true for me to ask a question. And the fourth thing, the secret fourth thing, is that sometimes I don't think the answer is any of my business. Even if I think
Yo,
all of those things are true, I'm like, do
yes.
I actually want to know the answer to this question? Is this any of my goddamn business, or is it better for me not to know? But I'm also fairly comfortable with uncertainty. That's kind of something that I have really been working hard on for a lot of my life is figuring out how to be comfortable in moments where things cannot be known, which I think is why I like tarot, and but also why I don't ask a lot of predictive questions because I think in some cases things are just not my fucking business, and knowing an answer or thinking I know an answer is actually going to fuck my shit up way more than just not knowing.
I think that's a really important. You brought up a lot of stuff that I was just taking notes on, and I think that the note that like
Baby.
comfort, speaking of comfort with uncertainty, yes, you perfect angel who doesn't know who the president is. I love.
He's
I,
not a perfect angel. He's throwing a full-blown temper tantrum, and I had to mute myself while you both were saying beautiful, wisdom-filled things. But he's here now, and so he'll be quiet.
our perfect mascot, Gus the dog. Um, no, I think that there was something you brought up though around like, does the tarot know it or whatever I'm talking to through the tarot?
Yeah.
And I think that's also an interesting thing to know, especially around like the yes no divination systems and tarot, like astrology and numerology,
Yeah.
less so. But like, if I get the tool, will the tool have the answer? Or it like what's your approach? I'm curious, like for both of you, like because I know some of my decks like have personalities. Like I go to certain decks for certain things because like yeah, some of them are nicer and some of them are more
Yeah.
no bullshit. But I also generally don't treat the tarot, just to keep with that example, as like that the tarot is what knows. I'm like, I'm communicating with spirit, ancestor, deity, planet, whoever it is, like whoever I'm invoking. Like I'm looking for answers from spirit through the tarot. But I know that's not true for everyone. So I'm, yeah, curious. You.
Um,
My
I,
answer is the same, so it's not very interesting.
I do think that I frame it like similarly to you, Gina, where that
Mm,
I feel like the tarot is the tool.
mhm.
I think that archetypically, which not everyone reads tarot archetypically,
Yeah.
but there is a way to read tarot archetypically that you
Mhm.
make it more about the cards
Yeah.
and the story that they are
Yeah.
presenting, and that there is a literal reading that you
Yeah.
can do of the cards that I think is less about spirit speaking
Mhm.
and more about trusting like the magic of the pull. And so maybe that's
Yeah.
where spirit lies and
Yeah.
less in like the channeling of a message if you're reading kind of more straightforward. I don't
Mm.
know exactly how to speak to it.
No,
But
that makes total sense what you're
yeah,
saying.
but I do, and I know people who read tarot very predictive, like in a very predictive way, and have their own language with the
Mhm.
cards. But again, then that comes back to like practitioner
Yeah.
relationship,
Totally.
Yeah.
and that's what they feel comfortable doing.
Yeah.
And that's just not something I feel comfortable
Yeah.
doing. Like I would never pull the levers and be like, oh, in June, something huge is going to happen. But like I know people
People
who
do
have,
that. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And there's plenty of history around that and like support and resources. If that's the way
Yeah.
you want to read, like there are people who do it and there's a, yeah.
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 I guess with numerology, I do feel like numerology can be more predictive in that we revisit these cycles. So it's less of predicting and more of observing
Yes.
Yeah.
and saying, oh, there is actually something to this.
Yeah.
That even if you can have a spectrum of experiences within a numeric energy, you're gonna be on the spectrum
Yeah.
every 9 years. You're gonna
Yeah.
re-meet yourself in this process, and you might be somewhere different,
Yeah.
or you might be going through the same things. I do find it would be hypocritical of me to say that I don't predict or forecast using numerology because I definitely do. I'm glad that we're having this conversation because I find that I'm holding different space for the idea that something could just not be applicable at all,
Yeah.
which I feel like I led us astray.
No, you didn't lead us astray. You were brilliant.
But what was
I think we're talking around and about like how predictions, when they get too specific, can be
Mm.
less useful. And I think having, and I mean, this is the Mercury talking, but like having more options and understandings and layers of meaning around certain numbers for cycles, for example, or certain planetary transits or certain cards or combinations of cards, those can look a lot of different ways. And I think if you're the more experience you have and the more capacity you have for different meanings of these
Yeah.
things, the more options you're going to have and the more softness you're going to be able to hold around things. But I think some of what you're not talking about experience, but I do think that there is something to like a fresh newbie beginner who's like so excited to do their very first tarot reading, or who's
Yeah.
looking at their natal chart for the first time in the context of transits or whatever, and completely scares the shit out of themselves because they see something that scares them and they only have one way to understand it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
think that there is something really valuable in talking about that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like two things are true when I am forecasting, whether that's at my newsletter or like in our monthly forecast. Like on the one hand, I am trying to use as inclusive language as possible without losing specificity of what it of examples of what it can look like,
Yeah.
while at the same time, too, knowing that there will absolutely be people who read it and listen to it who do not feel it is applicable to them. Like there is no such thing as a universal forecast, as a truly universal like general horoscope divination forecast for the year ahead. And I think sometimes what folks, and I'm curious for your thoughts on this, I think one of the many reasons that I have closed to client readings is because, and I did a lot of work to make sure I was getting the kind of clients and doing the kind of astrology work that I wanted to do, like around timing and year ahead forecasting. Because I'm like, astrology is an occult art, but it's around divining the quality of time. That's what it's around. Like, I can't tell you when you're, for example, gonna meet your spouse. That is not so much. Like, I guess there are things I can look at, but like, I'm not here for that kind of like, when will this happen? Who will it be? Where will it be? I'm like, I think half of the time that people are booking with an astrologer, at least, what they actually want to see is a psychic or a seer, like someone who actually, like I think of our dear friend Sasha Ravage, like someone who is a proper seer, like who will go into trance and like see shit for you. Like that is a very specific kind of divinatory gift that exists. And also, which is why like infrequently book that kind of thing because, again, it's what Meg said. I don't want to know. Some of it's none of my business. Like, I don't want to fucking know these things. But I think astrology and maybe like also tarot and numerology are like ever so slightly more socially acceptable than like going to see your local witch who's gonna like literally like roll their eyes in the back of their head and, you know, and literally see things on your behalf. I feel like a lot of the time people come to me and like that's actually what they want. And I'm like, I can tell you what Saturn, like what kinds of challenges Saturn is going to be presenting in this part of your life. I am not equipped to do that like proper prediction work. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, but also it's like people, do they even know what the range of options are, right? And also I think like the social acceptability piece is a big and like respectability politics, I think are in the like in and adjacent to occultism, which is hilarious given how like I use like marginalized very literally and like how illegal these practices became under the Catholic Church, under the creation of Europe as a like continent, as like nation state empire. Like these things, the rise of Christianity, like all this shit has been so outlawed and so on the margins. And scientific revolution came along and really like cast belief out of the everyday. Is my horrific oversimplification, but like I don't know. I think there's a lot around these topics that people don't know that they don't know and like don't necessarily understand the distinctions between what would you want to see a tarot reader for versus why do you want to see a numerologist or an astrologer who, as like B said, we are very much more in the business of like observing patterns
Hmm.
and forecasting based on historically what has happened. Yeah.
Yeah, and to just jump off of that, I was thinking a lot when Meg, you were talking earlier about fortune telling, that like Romani practice, which
Mm.
is obviously closed and not for us, and but please see a Romani practitioner.
Mhm.
But Romani practice is very much about fortune telling
Yeah.
and is very much about prediction, and like that's the training and that's the ancestral inheritance. So
Yeah.
you're, I think you're right on the money that there is a lack of education in terms of what is available to you. Just as we would say you need specificity in your questions, you also need specificity in the type of reading tool practitioner that you're seeing. You
Yep.
know, these are all like conscious choices that you can make in order to put yourself in the best situation possible to receive the information that you are truly seeking. And also, yeah, that uncertainty piece I think is so key. I just keep thinking about Fleabag season two and her in that confessional just saying, I want somebody to tell me what to do. And I think that that is such a
Yo.
human
Yeah.
desire at the core of ethical forecasting is like we just want someone to tell us what to do. We just want someone to say, this will happen to you on this date. But
Yeah.
then that becomes doomsday prophecy. And
Yeah.
like, what happens when that date comes and goes and like nothing happens? Then you're upset. You don't believe in it. I just think it's also sensitive.
It is. It's a really
It is.
tender thing. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think fundamentally people often want reassurance. They want to know that something is going to happen. They're not asking if something's going to happen. They're asking when it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Mhm.
They want to like outsmart the if maybe part, and they want to get to the tell me when I'm going to fall in love. Tell me when I'm going to get married. Tell me when my ex is going to come back. Tell me when I'm going to get a job. Tell me when president's going to die. Like whatever. Whatever thing you're crossing your fingers for
Every
and rolling fingers
astrologer has
for.
been wrong about that. I need people to
I
stop
know. I
predicting
keep
his
seeing
death.
predictions and I'm like, you all have got to chill. I promise he'll die someday because he's a human being, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
everybody's got to chill.
Everyone's got to
My
fucking chill.
algorithm is not on that. My
Oh my
algorithm
God.
is talking to me about Stranger Things conformity gate, and that is a date that's already come and
I
gone.
am
And
not on
guess what?
Stranger Things
I am
TikTok,
not.
and I'm
Yeah,
so
no,
glad
that's
because
one
I don't
show we
care.
never got into, which it seems, I don't know, heard the
That's
finale
fine.
was
I watched the
really,
first season and then that was it.
Great, you've seen it.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the sense
yeah,
I get.
Also, my Magic 8 Ball is Stranger Things branded. I just have to be
it's so
honest with you.
funny. It's
Uh-huh.
so funny. I
Maybe
love it.
that's why she's such a mess.
Maybe that's why she's a mess.
That is why she gives me
Yeah.
80s vibes, like old ancient diner hag
And that's
vibes.
why she's pissy right now. She's
That's
like, I
why.
know what you're doing to this show. She won't
I don't
stand
know.
for it.
I will use a dramatic example of an astrological prediction, but
Mhm.
it is one that is grounded in, as B said, observation. Like this is why I do my lectures, my astro historical lecture series, because it's like, yes, I guess I'm predicting things for like the upcoming Saturn transit or Neptune and Aries and what that means, but it's all grounded in me giving you 500 years of what has happened historically, culturally, in art, in war, like during these periods. What are the consistent patterns that routinely happen when like Saturn is in Aries with Neptune in Aries? Specifically, I'm seeing a lot of, with everything happening in Venezuela, obviously, and Gaza, and like, around World War III bullshit, like America going to war again in a really explicit way. And it's like, okay, as much as I don't like the fear mongering, but also Uranus is about to go into Gemini for good in April. And every single time, Uranus in Gemini is the US's like natal Uranus. Like it was Uranus was in Gemini when the revolution started here, or when they officially kicked it off with the declaration and what have you. But every time Uranus has been in Gemini, the US has been in a major war. And like that is consistent. Like it's not every time, right? Like Uranus wasn't like Vietnam, Korea, that was something else. Like, but the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, and World War II, those are like our previous periods. And those are kind of major, like defining, like nation defining, story of the nation defining, like what story do we tell ourselves about ourselves? Who are we? Like, who are we really? Like Uranus and Gemini very much like brings all of that up. So I see these astrologers being like, well, we're going to end up in war again. And on the one hand, I'm like, we've been in proxy wars the whole time. So, like, let's not even pretend
And
that
also,
we
are we
aren't.
not in a civil war right now? Like, I'm sorry,
Are we
we're
not
recording
in a
this on
civil war
January
right
9th.
now?
Are we not in a civil war right now? I think we've been in a civil war.
Yeah, but like in the way that I think, I mean, when a war starts is the service, like no one, we rarely declare when a war starts. Like usually it's historians looking back and citing, oh, this event was actually kind of the beginning of all of these things. And like that gift of observation and hindsight and analysis and pattern recognition, like that is so core to history, is so core to numerology and astrology. So I'm like, when you see astrologers like saying we're going to end up in a much more prominent, obvious war during Uranus and Gemini, I'm like, well, yeah. Like, but it's not, to me, it's not like that it's a scary forecasting. Like, that actually is grounded. Okay, for like almost 300 years, when this planet is here, this is what the US is involved in. And also, different nations have different, like, similar kinds of astrological triggers, if you will. But yeah, so I just wanted to give that as like an example of a kind of dramatic collective prediction that I'm seeing a lot of right now. But it also is grounded in cycles, in historical cycles. And also, sorry, I've been talking so long. The other piece of this is that, like, kind of what you both were saying, how the ethics of how you deliver news, the ethics of how you position what you're sharing, like, and the language you use, and being aware of the context that you exist in and the context that your readers, listeners, clients exist in. Like, that is also something that so gets collapsed in the instant attention, make people mad and reactive algorithm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's similar to the like one real prediction I've ever made on Call Your Coven, which was that Trump was going to win again,
You
which
that's
was
but that
again.
episode is a great example. I was looking at the astrology and very much taking the most optimistic view
Yeah.
that was
I
informed
was like,
by,
oh, we're
yeah,
You're
this
like, well,
yeah.
we're in this other thing still. So I think yeah, I think that that's a great example and really does hone in on that it's less about prediction and less about forecasting and actually more about rear view observation
Yeah.
of patterns. And so that to me actually seems like a much more practical way to approach a
Yeah.
forecast,
Yeah.
and a more ethical way, because you're
Mhm.
saying, I don't know what will happen in the future, but here's what has happened.
Mhm.
Here's what has already come to pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, here it is. And also
Like, let's look backwards, actually.
Yeah.
I'll shout out to like right now there are some big Venus cycle things happening this year, and a really great astrologer who has done a lot of work helping people track their own Venus cycles and how that incidentally relates to things like your patterns in love and relationships and what issues come up in your relationships. Palace K. Augustine has like amazing workbooks toward this end, right? And it's not that you're going to book a session with Palace and have them just tell you when you're going to meet your partner. It's that you can, but this is that other piece I think that you both have kind of got at too, which is like people wanting to be told something certainly and alighting and cutting out the work and the reflection and the sitting with the discomfort that it takes to actually process what something means for you in real time. Because I'm like, I would recommend to people that they get like one of Palace's guidebooks or workbooks, like, and kind of look back on, oh, when in these years, what was happening? And in these years, when Venus was here in the cycle, what was happening? And like, but that also requires a willingness to sit in self-reflection, um, that is not always present.
Well, and I think sometimes there's also like I want to find a way to articulate this that doesn't sound judgmental, because we all do this. I think every human being does this. But like I think there is something to the like, is there something coming? Is the thing that I want going to arrive in a way that I can't fuck it up?
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like I want to know that this is going to happen regardless of what choices I make to get me there. And I'm like, baby girl, that is not a thing that is possible to know. But I think that there is something to that like desire to be I know, sorry. But
He
Yeah.
is making a
No,
face.
I
but I think
know.
it's
I'm sorry.
real, right? It's again, it's all goes back to that reassurance thing. It's like I want to know that the thing that I want is going to arrive at a time that I can anticipate it, but that the choices that I make, you know, I can't screw this up. Like that it's going to come no matter what decisions I make. And I think that's a really messy, hard, painful thing to sit in. And I also think that it is just part of being a human being. But
It so
yeah.
is. It's like so human and totally something that we all do. And
Mhm.
I all what the face was because
It was
I
a
thought
very
about
cute
this
face.
when when Gina was talking about seeing a seer
Mm.
and somebody that can literally see something for you. And then also when Meg, you were just talking about this, the idea of like even that like is a snapshot. And even
Yes.
that idea of like,
Yes.
will the thing that I want arrive in the form that I want it, in the time that I want it? And like, what if the answer was yes? You know, like, what if the answer was yes? But what you didn't know was like all the shit you were going to have to go through before
Mhm.
getting to that point, in which at any point something else could have I'm like butterfly affecting myself into
Yeah.
like
No, but
psychosis.
that's
But
real.
No,
Like
that's so real.
yeah, and so it just like already, I think the act of, and that's why divination, I think, is a much more comfortable space for me to land in, is because we can talk about
Yes.
more than just the outcome. You can talk about the, for lack of a better word, journey to get there,
Mhm. Yeah.
but also like how to get there, how to actually make it through, because I feel like so much of predictions, it's
Yeah.
a very limited slice of the story.
I so agree with that. And I want to flag here that like what I'm about to talk about is not timeline jumping. I don't like timeline jumping TikTok. I don't like destiny swap. No, none of that. None of that.
I'm gonna be real with you. I don't even think I understand it, and I don't want to know.
No,
That's the
no.
thing, is like I
I
believe
see it and I'm
people
like,
can
what are we
timeline jump.
talking about?
Like,
But this is I'm no I'm specifying it though because I think I have a different way of understanding what is probably a similar phenomenon to what they're talking about. I just don't call it timeline jumping. And because I'm like, to me, I'm going to be able, like when I'm seeing a client, I'm going to be able to guess much more accurately what a transit is going to bring for them the closer it is to happening. So, like if it's happening in 2 weeks versus 2 years, like I'm going to have a much better sense because I know the context of their life, and that immediately narrows down a lot of pieces, like in terms of what is literally feasible, like barring lottery winning windfall, like very rare, again, the extremes that
Yeah.
you were saying earlier,
Yeah.
barring an extreme event in like either direction, like I'm gonna have a much better ability to capture like what it's likely to look like for them the closer it is in time, and also when I have a sense of what kind of decisions they're making. Like this is
Mhm.
the difference between someone, like again keeping with the looking for a partner, this is the difference between forecasting around a Venus cycle for a client who is actively dating, actively going out in situations where they're meeting a bunch of people, versus someone who like bought a love candle from Enchantments and it has stayed in their apartment the whole year. Like those are two very, very different like like how much are they co-creating? How much are they like, all right,
Mhm.
I said I want this, I'm doing the magic for it, but I'm also acting as if. And I feel like that's such an important piece of both working with the astrology and also just with magic in general. Like for to be able to assess like the quality or the likelihood of something happening. Which is, sorry, back to the timeline jumping thing though. It's just to say I think that there are fewer options and much clearer options of what could happen the closer that event is in time. The further out we get, like this is why I will never go past a year ahead, and usually I'm only either giving a reading or receiving a reading that's really like just for the next 3 to 6 months, because once we're beyond that, like the context of the world is impossible to determine, like let alone in my own life, like what health things might come up for me or for Meg or for a family member. Like there's so many unknowns that it's like the possibilities that far in the distance are actually quite limitless. And I think to your point too about the seership is like important to note that they are only seeing a piece, and they are seeing a piece of what is like most likely at this moment when you're acting as if this and this, and something else might happen that might totally collapse that possibility or open something else up. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
And I
So
think
that's how I feel about that. Yeah.
you're both touching on like the agency piece of the free will versus
Yeah.
fate,
Yeah.
I was like,
versus
somebody
Yeah.
say
whatever.
the word agency. I'm like,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
agency.
100%. And I think that how how someone is acting, the decisions that
Mhm.
they are making are so much going, yeah, have so much impact on driving a result forward or
Mhm.
not. And before we move too far away from this, this is also validating to literally a class that I just started taking in school around psychodynamic theory, and the idea that psychodynamic theory leaves space for mystery and leaves space for that which we cannot control and that which we cannot know, while also taking into account both internal and external factors about a person. So
Yeah.
not just how they act and how they feel and how they and who they believe themselves to be, but then also what are the socioeconomic situations that they're living under? Like what's their intersectionality? Where are they oppressed? Where are they privileged? Like it takes all of these things into account because again, that's how we meet a full, holistic human being
Yes.
in practice. And I think so much of predicting and forecasting flattens, and it has to by nature of what it's
General
akin
year ahead
to.
horoscopes have to. Yeah.
Yes, they have to.
But also to that point, you're not going to get general advice for your life from a general year. Like you really have to sit with a one-on-one. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
tough. It's tough. It's just a curious question of like, what purpose do you
Mhm.
think ethically you can choose a term or you can respond to all of them. Like, what purpose do you think they serve? And how would you advise folks listening to engage with forecasts? obviously keep listening to ours. Duh.
I will just repeat what I kind of like what I've said, which is I think general forecasts are helpful for getting a sense of the collective weather. Like today, it's kind of cloudy in New York. There are how many million? 8 million people here. The weather is cloudy for me. It's cloudy for our mayor, Zohran Mamdani. It's cloudy for the Republicans on Staten Island. And it's cloudy for the finance bros in Midtown. Like, very to B's point, very, very different. But what we do with that cloudy weather, how are we each going to individually treat it? Like, that's a very different story. So I think just being I think predictions and divination and forecasting, like they are actually so central to my life and to also my profession. And I actually really love these things, but you always have to keep your own context first. Remember that you are the expert on your own lived experience, and like a practitioner coming in with a doomsday something for all Aquarius risings or whatever, that does not supersede your personal lived experience in this moment. Yeah, my advice for engaging with it in any modality at any time is just remember that you are a human being with agency and free will. And while your lived context might limit those things in certain respects, like you might have less money or less ability to like move freely in the world, but like what you can do with your free will and how you receive that information is on you. And that's on Saturn. Like,
That's the Saturn
Preach.
take.
oh my God, a friend recently commented on one of my reels. She was like, I love it when you scold me. And I was like, I'm not trying to scold people. Oh no. Is that how this comes across?
Okay.
You know how Gina
Go.
feels about
Mercury will take. I will come in with Mercury. I think because tarot can be really predictive, can be really fortune teller-esque, and there are people who I fundamentally believe are incredibly gifted at using the tarot for hyper-specific, deeply accurate, wildly magical predictions. I'm just going to be talking about my own practice and the ways that I use tarot if you're like following me and you see me talking about a card. But I think that tarot is incredibly relational. I think tarot is incredibly conversational. And I think tarot is something that requires a ton of context based on your own life. I think all of these modalities have a lot of space for interpretation and for layers of meaning, but I would argue that tarot might the most, just because you have combinations of cards, and then you also have the relationship that you have with the cards, and then every cycle, the consistency with which you're pulling certain cards, you're going to build relationships with the cards based on that. So every individual practitioner is going to have a unique and individual relationship with their tarot, like in general, not just a specific deck, and that is part of the magic. So if you see a random person on TikTok pulling cards saying this is for you, if you're seeing this right now, it's for you, you get to decide actually if that's for you or not, and you get to decide if it applies to you. Just like what Jeanna was saying, you were a person with agency, you get to decide if you receive that reading, and you get to decide if it applies to you, right? I'm going to tell you straight up, I never listened to those readings. I used to do like tarot scopes for Autostraddle. I used to do like weekly pick a card on Instagram. I don't do those things anymore, and I don't read anyone who does them anymore. And that's just my preference. I also never remember. I also tend to see things like a month late, so who cares? I think that there are people for whom that's really supportive, and I think there are people for whom that is really anxiety inducing. And so what I would really just say is to pay attention to your body and to your mind and heart and spirit and brain when you are receiving messages like that, and pay attention to how it's actually impacting you. If it's empowering, inspiring, supportive, encouraging, if it feels good, if you have a reader you really trust, fantastic. But if you're just like absorbing every message that gets hucked your way, and there are a lot of them for tarot on social media, do yourself a favor and like disengage for a little bit and see how that feels, because you might find that reading for yourself, doing a weekly reading challenge with a friend, doing a journaling series, I have a million of them, or like just getting a professional reading every once in a while is a lot more supportive and regulating for your nervous system than absorbing every single tarot reader's message on TikTok. So that's how I feel about that. And that's Mercury.
I think that's a valuable point, Meg, though. Like, it's not that you're only looking for like affirming shit that feels good, but anything that like is putting you in a state of fear,
Yeah.
that is not good
And
for
people do that with tarot a lot. Like there are cards that are really activating, and also then every reader's bringing their own shit to the reading. So
yeah.
like I have a great relationship with the Three of Swords, but a lot of people don't. So the way I read that card is going to feel different than the way that other people read that card. And that's fine. Nobody's wrong, but if that card freaks you out, you might find my take on it really comforting, or you might find it feeling avoidant or something. You know what I mean? And that just is. There's no right or wrong, that just is.
Yeah, the only thing I will add to that about tarot, because I will speak just about
No,
numerology.
all three of us are tarot readers, so everybody gets to weigh in on tarot. I know
Well,
that.
I was just gonna say, this comes from my own experience, is
Mhm.
that you can even say no, thank you, I'm not here to receive this reading for cards that you've pulled for yourself.
Totally.
Like,
100%.
That,
if you
yeah.
find yourself in a place of I need reassurance and you're not getting it from the cards, it is not your fault. Nothing is happening. And you can just put those cards back in that deck and you can say clearly, this is not the tool for me right now.
Yeah. Sometimes you're not in space to hear it. Sometimes I know I've asked a fucked up question and I start pulling cards and I realize what's happened and I'm like, you know what? Like throw the whole
On
reading
me.
out. Like this is on me. Like I'm out, you know?
Yeah,
And
I'm
that
out.
happens.
I also want to actually add something because I know a bunch of practitioners also do listen to our podcast, which is
Mhm.
such an honor, honestly. Like, whenever other people who do this professionally, like, it just means a lot to us that
Yeah.
you listen. And I will say, again, in the sense of like when you're a reader, it's important to go get read. I recently had a reading, because as Diana Rose Harper says, you can't see your own ass without a mirror.
Truly.
But I recently had a geomancy reading from the wonderful good Dr. Al Cummins, the rare
Incredible.
man, the rare singular man who I will actually get spiritual consultation from.
Mhm.
And he, in the geomancy reading, the first like position that he was examining was, is this a good quarry for you? Like, is
Mhm.
this actually, and I thought that was so smart
So
and
wise.
so wise to start it. And I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but I think that that question also, if you're someone who like divines for other people, assessing the nature of the quarry itself, and is this to Meg's and B's like earlier points, is it the right question to be asking? Like, I've been doing this professionally for years and years at this point, and I learned so much about how to read for someone in that reading with him recently. Like, it was also so like contained to a 3 month time frame, and we're assessing everything from the question up. And I think that's like really a good thing to just keep in the back of your mind if you're someone who reads for other people a lot, personally or professionally.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and you're both speaking to lived experience, and you're both
Yeah.
speaking to like, you have to do the thing to engage with the thing and understand the thing from all
Yeah.
angles. And then you also have to know yourself and you have to
Mm,
know what works for you. You're not going to pick a practitioner that's going to ask you for a 5-year plan if you are a person who likes a 3 to 6 month plan. Like, so you have to, it really does just come back for that, like, to
yeah.
that 1 year aphorism of know thyself,
Yeah.
because that is obviously the key to all of this magic and mystery and like making meaning that's actually going to be supportive
Yeah.
for you. The way that I've found numerology to be the most supportive in a predictive way or a forecasting way, and how I think people should come to or might want to consider coming to this work. I found yearly cycles to be deeply reflective, but again, you have to be willing to self-reflect. I think that does keep coming up as well, at least in all of our values and like ethic sets. But I find that tracking your own personal yearly cycles can be really helpful. I do find that because there's only 12 months in a year and only 9 numbers in the building blocks, these cycles, we go through them in terms of weeks and months and years. And so there's a lot of real boots on the ground experience with these cycles that can become a language that you speak. And just like my co-hosts have already said, like your own practice and your own experience begets your own skill, and you'll be better at reading your own cycles after, in a second batch of 9 years that you're paying attention to than you will in the first one.
Yeah.
And so I do believe a lot of it to be observation. Yes, how do I feel about what advice would I give about coming to like collective numerological cycles? I think it's a lot of the same. It's like, see how this is applicable to your life. Be okay with it not being applicable to your life. If it activates you, I do encourage questioning around the activation because I think a lot of times we avoid things that are actually really key for us to be looking at. And so
Mm.
again, from a psychodynamic theory, we look at avoidance. We don't shy away from avoidance. And we don't think about getting over the wall. We wonder, why is the wall there?
Mm.
So I do think that with collective information, if you're having a big activation to something that's shared, get curious. Why is this activating to you? Sometimes I'm activated and I'm actually really excited for things, and it's like, oh, that's the little piece of me that doesn't think it could get that good, so it's not all fear mongering. It's not all like, but sometimes it's worth, yeah, just asking more questions around why we feel activated by something. But then, yeah, there's a lot of like, I feel like predictive reading falls in the extremes of either this is my utmost hope, dream, wish for this. This is the worst case scenario. And so it's just a lot of like personal tending, like anything else.
Yeah. We're coming to these tools to learn,
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
explore. And like, who knows
Yeah.
what's going to happen?
Again, divination. Like we're exploring the unknown. We're digging into something that might not have certainty. And I think that's part of the magic, actually, not necessarily like a bad thing.
Ironically enough, and I know it's like an AA thing, so that caveat, but I really do think the Serenity Prayer is a wise grounding. Like how does it go again? It's like the courage to change the things I can, the something,
Well,
wisdom,
you missed the
discernment.
serenity, the
The wis
serenity
the,
for
yeah, like the
accepting things
wisdom,
happening.
discernment to change, to like accept the things I can't, like that are beyond my control, the wisdom to know the difference. Like I think that's actually like low key my thesis about
Yeah.
about forecasting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah. Thank you guys for being open to doing this topic. I'm so excited we got to talk about it, and I also feel like I learned things today, and that's always fun to walk away having learned things from my brilliant co-hosts.
No, I think it's a juicy topic, and I really do think that if you're engaging with these modalities, no matter how you feel about prediction, it is just worth thinking about your own beliefs, how those modalities can support and uplift those beliefs, like to Bee's point, like where things are sticky and uncomfortable, and what that might tell you about how a modality is landing or how a reader is working with that modality. But yeah, I think being curious and seeing what something can offer you is always going to be a useful place to start. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's so relevant
Mhm.
because this is the time of year where everyone is making predictions.
Yeah,
And
100%.
so, yeah, we're probably late getting to you at this point.
But I do think it's an evergreen topic,
Yeah.
like because yeah, I think it's something that comes up so much. Are there ways that people can work with folks right now that we want to talk about, or do we want to just close out?
Yeah, I want to quickly flag again in the sense that astrology is the weather
Mhm.
and it doesn't tell you what to do, it just advises you on how to do things with the weather that we're all experiencing. I have a guidebook specifically for writers and artists called Set Yourself Up 2026, and it has 5 days every single month for engaging with varying different parts of the creative practice and creative process, from starting to revising output work heavy days, input artist date days, days to launch, days to pitch. It's got all that good stuff. And there are 5 days a month that I have selected for folks. Again, just really as a weather advisory.
I
Oh,
love
yeah.
it.
Well, funny enough, I have a year ahead workshop that is
You
available
do. I still need to watch it.
for immediate download. It is called Throwing Clay on the Wheel Year. We talk about 10, we talk about 1. And then most of the session, it's an 80-minute recording with the slideshow PDF and a transcript. Most of the session is calculating your yearly cycle, your monthly numbers for the year, and lots of questions, prompts, and pep talks about how to work with your own numbers under. So, what we've been talking about, like how to break down the many cycles that we're experiencing at any point. And then I also have a PDF called 52 Weeks, Numerological Food for Thought for every week of the year, something like that. And it is literally the numbers 1 through 52 and musings on how the numbers could show up that week and some actions to take. That's really simple if you're looking for just food for thought every Sunday or Monday or whenever you start your week for this year. And those are both on my Gumroad shop. So we'll link it, but it's rebeccascolnick.gumroad.com. And you can also find them on my website.
And yeah, I have a couple things actually. I've been working on this like grief program, this like 10-week grief program called River Styx for a very long time. I did a grief facilitation training program back in 2024 that is based on a specific 10-step program that's been used by hundreds and hundreds of people. And I have translated it over to tarot and made it into a journaling program. And so that is going to launch. The doors will open at the end of January. It'll actually start the first week of February. But I'm really excited about that. It's been a long labor of love and a long time coming. But regardless of whether you can sign up for that program or not, I'm also going to be hosting a free journaling workshop like event thing. It'll be on Zoom. You can be cameras on or off. You don't have to talk at all, but we'll just be holding some space. I'll be offering some journaling prompts, some tarot spreads, and just some ways to engage with collective grief, which I think is just deeply relevant right now. Grief is just really hard to wrap your head around, especially if you have experience with personal grief. The ways that we navigate collective grief can be a little bit different than the ways that we navigate personal grief. There's some overlap, but there's also some different strategies we can use to tackle collective grief that are really different. So this is just going to be a gentle introduction to that kind of work. And yeah, I think it'll be great. We're going to put some links in the show notes. The other thing I just want to flag is that Jeanna and I actually run a 6-month creativity and spirituality container called The Grove. And we are going to be launching the next spring summer container. It's going to start in March. So we still have to decide what day we're opening that up to people to purchase, but just want to put that on people's radars as it is a longer term commitment. And we want to give people plenty of time to think about that. But it's been a really beautiful experience. We've now run 2 cohorts and we're getting ready for our 3rd. And it's just one of the coolest things that we do. So if you are a creative practitioner, if you want to bring witchy shit into your creative work, if you want to sit with a really beautiful community of people, The Grove is for you. So
yeah. The last thing I will say is if you want to listen to non-witchy conversations where we just talk about heated rivalry, subscribe to us on Patreon because we might do that. We might do non-witchy just us friend chats.
Yeah.
It's mostly because we have a hard time talking about other topics.
Yeah, we always start these meetings and spend about half an hour just catching up and then talking about the shit we want to talk about. And then we start recording and we're like, what if we started just doing little chats and like recording some of those other things so that you can get to know us and also just hear our thoughts about things that are not, current events and the magical weather.
I mean, Bee is literally wearing, for folks who aren't watching on YouTube, who are listening, she is wearing a sweatshirt that says, I'm coming to the cottage, which like banger.
Incredible.
Banger of a shirt.
Yeah. And Jeanna's wearing a pink Barbie shirt that matches her pink Barbie glasses. So you both really showed up in full form today, and I love it so much.
And Meg,
I am just wearing a flannel.
Well, Meg is not wearing black.
Okay, well, after all of this, we will be back with a forecast for February. The next time you hear from us. But now, hopefully, you know a little bit more about how we're all coming to this. And it was really important for me to start thinking about this and how it's shifted and just, rooting back into like magic and mystery, being a part of the practice, and how I really do appreciate that we all are able to sit in uncertainty in a way that it feels hard won for all of us. It's not without effort to be able to do this. So thank you.
Wise words.
Yay. Okay, we'll see you soon.